Well, look, as I say, thank you so much for putting some time aside. I actually had a look this morning. I think this is episode 16. So I'll have to remember that number, special number. But no, I really appreciate you putting some time aside. I appreciate how busy things must have been and are over with you guys. I suppose most of my network coming from TIC don't know exactly who you are and who the company are. But just in case there is anyone that's unsure, do you want to kind of maybe introduce yourself and the company in a brief summary?
Sure. Again, thank you. Also to you, thank you, Aidan, for the time. Phenna was essentially founded in 2019, management buyout, Paul Barry, initially with the Anson family. So our first acquisition was Anson, originally in 18, but the management buyout was in 19. Paul's vision, which hasn't really changed, was to do a global consolidation, broad-based TIC across 5 core segments. We started, as I say, with the Anson acquisition in America, essentially focused on the UK from there. Got hit by COVID like everyone else, which meant you couldn't do much aside from the UK. So we became a little bit bigger in the UK vis-a-vis everything else. I joined in 2024, so 2 years ago. And essentially, Aidan, we've not looked to change anything. We've just basically looked to accelerate and also build the scale, build out management team, build out integration, basically build out the capability so we can scale on a more rapid base. But in terms of strategy, in terms of, global consolidator, 5 core segments, focus on the culture, focus on the entrepreneurial spirit and the type of acquisitions we do, nothing has changed since the first day. And honestly speaking, our intention is not to change anything anytime soon. Just keep doing what we do. We think we do it quite well, and just to keep the focus on, again, the strategy, the segments, the places, the type of people, and just doing more of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was saying to you before kind of the recording started. Obviously, I've done probably a TICtalk episode every 2 weeks, doing posts on a daily basis for the past 6 months. And I think you guys have just come into the story every single time. I think it's been pretty relentless in terms of the acquisitive activity that you've been doing. And I think it was probably last quarter, so end of Q1. I mean, it's scary that we're already halfway through the year, but end of Q1, I did a summary just in terms of businesses within the TIC market, who's kind of, top of the list in terms of acquisitions, and it was Phenna. And that was really, really exciting to see, because when you've got companies like SGS, who I think, a lot of people see as the market leader, when you've got you guys that are really competing at that level, it's super exciting to see. I think that when it comes to you guys as an organization, looking from the outside in, there seems to be a lot more flexibility and fluidity when it comes to, I suppose, the direction that you do want to go in. Huge organizations like SGS, I think that, because of the structure, it's perhaps harder to be entrepreneurial in spirit from all levels of the business. Whereas I think, again, when it comes to the fluidity and the flexibility, and I suppose that ability to be quite innovative in the thinking, again, from all levels of the business, that's something that I've seen personally. Would you agree that that's definitely there?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, as an aside, your posts, just kudos to you. Your posts are actually very well written, quite insightful, especially as when you write about Phenna. But anyway, that's obviously
Thank you very much.
as an aside. But yeah, I mean, I think first of all, yes. I mean, I think we try very hard not to have what I call bureaucracy or excessive bureaucracy. So again, we try to keep things simple, but that's also helped, Aidan, by the fact that we sort of know what we like and what we don't like. So we have a very clear criteria to the M&A corporate development team. So, we've done what, 39 acquisitions in the last 17 months. And that sounds a lot, but we see a lot more stuff, and we go through a lot more stuff, and the majority of stuff we see falls away because it doesn't hit the criteria. It's not in one of the 5 core segments. It's not been in business long enough. It doesn't have the right metrics. We don't believe in the management team, or the management team don't want to stay with us because they want to do 100%, or they want to do, a quick exit, which is not our approach. We don't culturally they'll fit. So we actually filter it down very quickly. So I think, one of the reasons, yes, we do a lot, but for us, it's because we're very clear what we do. We're very clear what we don't do. We're very clear what we're going to sign off. And because we've been doing it now again for many years, and we're not changing the approach. I mean, that's the most important thing. If you come to me and say, Phil, I've got a great business, let's say within automotive, great. That's not for us. We don't do automotive. I've got a great business, Phil, absolutely tremendous business. The founder wants an 100% exit. Great. That's not for us. Yeah. So there's lots of things where you look at them and you go, great business, but they don't hit our core criteria. So we
Sure.
just move on.
Sure. Yeah. I suppose, yeah, it sounds like it's just about staying true to, the morals and the ethos of the company, really. And, sticking true to the mission and where you want to go, which again is great. But yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I suppose leading on from that, what I was going to ask is what are your thoughts on how you guys have become what I would say is the leading consolidators within the space? I mentioned there that you're competing at the same level as SGS when it comes to the acquisitive activity. Um, would you say that it is down to the number of acquisitions being made, or would you say actually it goes a bit deeper in terms of how you're integrating the businesses? Like you said, being quite refined, making sure that everything fits aligned, which obviously will, I suppose, turn into higher increase in productivity, for example. Your workforce is going to be incredibly motivated. Do you think it goes that deep in terms of starting to look into cultural aspects, for example?
Think, Aidan, you're absolutely right. It goes much deeper. So again, we always start off with a founder, which is, what is it you want? Actually, we ask the question, what is it you personally want? What are you trying to achieve with a transaction? And the founders who basically say, I'm looking to de-risk, take some money off the table so I secure mine and my family's future, but I love my business. I love my employees. I don't think the journey's finished. I don't want to finish the journey. I'm looking for a partner that basically respects me, will work with me for the next phase. We're probably your partner, okay? We always tell our founders, listen, everyone's going to do a sales pitch and everyone's going to maybe promise you certain things. I don't know what that necessarily is, depends who you're talking to. So why don't you speak to our other founders? Like, don't speak to me. I mean, obviously, speak to me. It's nice that you speak to me as the CEO, but speak to Aidan over here, who sold his business to us 2 years ago, and ask him what it's been like. And ask him what
Mm,
it's been like. And is that what you want to hear? Is that basically what you're looking for? Is that what you're looking to achieve? So I'd say it goes deeper in the sense that there are a lot of founders out there who are not looking to sell their business 100%. They're looking to de-risk, take money off the table, grow their business with a trusted partner, work with a set of peers. We think we're the best option for you. And I think what we're finding is now compounding. So, more founders are talking to others, people are networked in the system, more brokers know about us, they know about businesses that we've acquired. So it's almost feeding the beast. It's sort of feeding itself. I think the second thing, to your point, cultural alignment. We're very clear what we are and we're very clear what we're not. I think many people, and it's no disrespect to others, it's no disrespect to a corporate, it's no disrespect to private equity, it's no disrespect for very good owners of a business, but it comes
mm,
back to what you want. If you basically want to retain, let's say, your identity and you want to stay running that business, but you want that trusted partner, that cultural alignment, to your point, Aidan, is critical. And I know this
mm.
sound a bit cliche, but we're nice people. Yeah, and I think just being nice, respectful, dealing with people in a respectful way. We don't play games. We don't load you up with debt. We don't put interest charges on there. We don't put in costs that you didn't have before. We don't play games with you. And we can
Sure.
always refer back to speak to the founders who joined us 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, gone through the journey, ask them what it's been like. So I think that is a critical part. And then I think on the other thing, in terms of sort of scale and integration, we have a very measured and thoughtful approach whereby there's some clear non-negotiables, as they would be for most investors. So, for example, on finance, we're a large business. You have to report in a certain way, on a certain time, in a certain format. That's non-negotiable, I'm sorry. In terms
Sure.
of IT, cyber, again, we have certain partners, we do it a certain way. It's non-negotiable. We can't have you be different. So I'd say there's a lot of support, structural, back office done things. Global insurance, we put you on our insurance network. Again, it's non-negotiable. You come in with our partner. And so there's things that are non-negotiable, but vast majority of those, the seller is actually happy because either they don't have it or they can see they get it better and it's probably a lower cost and they're benefiting from an EBITDA standpoint. On the
Mm,
commercial things, they're generally happy because now they're saying, okay, I've got a network of other founders who I can work with. And again, because they're earning and they're they roll equity with us, and their rolled equity is paid on EBITDA. If they can
Mm,
get synergies from us and it goes to their EBITDA, they're earning more money. So you don't actually have to. Again, you're dealing with very smart founders who are driven
for sure.
financially. If they can see it helps them on EBITDA, they're generally quite receptive, yeah. And so
Yeah, yeah.
they can leverage our network. And then when we get to a certain scale, let's say, for example, our UK franchise, then we may deploy other things. So, for example, our infrastructure platform, which is our largest, most mature platform, that's on
Mm,
one ERP system. It has one central commercial team. It has one shared service. Yes, when we've got real scale, we can integrate more. But fundamentally, they come on a journey with us, and we always, always, always respect the individual, Aidan. Yeah, so it's always
mm,
a respectful interaction, trying to find the best solutions for that business. And I think to your point, we don't win. I don't think we get this many deals because we pay the highest multiple. It's not just
mm.
a financial thing for us. If we can't meet what you want to do and we don't think you fit with us culturally, we just don't do the deal. I mean, the
Yeah, for
single
sure.
biggest reason we don't do a deal is because the seller wants 100% or close to, or we don't think they're going to fit culturally, and we're honest to them. And it's just, we're not going to, because we're just going to work with you for 5+ years. If you can't work with someone you like, don't do the deal.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. It's really interesting actually because the kind of points that I was going to lead on to here is about M&A strategy and acquisition activity. I suppose to get your thoughts on the market from a holistic point of view, and then maybe speak about what you're seeing from the eyes of Beam, the CEO of Phenna. You mentioned there, and it sounds like when it comes to your relationships with your partners, trust is obviously the biggest element there, from start to finish. And when you're saying about the non-negotiables, I think that's actually a really positive thing because when it comes to a potential partner and a prospective partner from your end, I think that people probably want that, right? When it comes to flexibility and fluidity as a company and being able to be innovative in thinking when it comes to being an employee, on the other hand, you've kind of got really strict rules when it comes to are you going to be a partner of ours? But I think that's a good thing because people want to know dealing with how it's going to work. They don't want any unknowns when it comes to that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Aidan, you're absolutely right. And what we do with all our potential partners is before, not after, before we close a transaction, we have a seller's guide. It's like a 7-page document, it's like an introduction to Phenna, and it basically outlines the headlines of what's not going to change,
mm,
what might change is optional. For example, we offer you, for example, our central marketing resources. We can help you improve your website. There's things that we can do, but that's a discussion between us. The stuff that's not going to change, for example, we're not going to get involved in day-to-day decisions and who you hire, what you pay people, how you price to a customer. There's some stuff obviously we help with there, but fundamentally day to day. And then there's things that are going to change, and we're very clear this is what's going to change, okay? And we're very clear what's going to be impacting in your business. So we have that outline and discussion before we close. So to your point, it's not a surprise. And they also have a choice before we close to say, you know what, I don't like the sound of that. So therefore I'm not going to close. Now we've not had that situation, but we give them the option by explaining it before we close.
100%. Yeah. It's really interesting as well because I think a lot of prospective candidates that I speak to in the market. I mean, obviously, first and foremost, my job is to help my clients when it comes to talent needs, right? But a lot of people that I speak to, it's interesting. This was probably more the case, I'd say, 12 months, 18 months ago. I think that people have got used to it now within such an acquisitive heavy market. But people would always ask me when I'm introducing them to a client, are they backed? Is it kind of private equity? And I'd always kind of say, why are you asking that? Just because it's not an abnormal question to ask, but it's always interesting to know the reason behind why they're asking it. And a lot of people, I'd say the majority, just like, well, I do tend to shy away from those sorts of opportunities because a lot of kind of the stress leaks through the ceiling and kind of, cracks in the floor. It becomes kind of micro management from the top down. Whereas obviously what you've just said there is you're very, very clear with your partners beforehand saying, look, we're not going to get involved with the day-to-days if that's not something that you want. And I think that's quite good for people to know because it kind of shows a different perspective. And actually, not all of these situations are like that. It's very much respectful between partners and giving them the freedom again and an initiative. Because I think, there's obviously some organizations out there that probably are a little bit, micromanagement in terms of, top down. And I think that really restricts, the ability to be entrepreneurial. And I was even kind of doing quite a bit of research before the call, right? And I know that entrepreneurial spirit, innovative thinking is massive with you guys, right? It's really, really important to you. So I think that was really interesting to find out, because I think it will give people watching that perspective of, okay, well, maybe when I'm presented with opportunities by Aidan in the future, it's about actually hearing them out instead of closing the door straight away because it's a group or it's a TIC platform or it's private equity backed, for example.
But also, Aidan, not all private equity is the same, obviously, and not all platforms are the same. Yes, if you look at our lead investor, Oakley Capital, they are essentially founded by an entrepreneur, and their whole ethos is to back entrepreneur-led businesses. Yeah. So obviously, Paul, as a founder, created Phenna, and so Oakley. How can I put this? Our relationship with Oakley is also, for me, having been in private equity now for 13 years. 1 second, sorry, my phone. I've been in private equity for 13 years. I'd say Oakley are, without doubt, the most respectful partner that I've encountered in my 13 years. Now, again, that doesn't mean I've not had good relationships with folks. I've had good relationships, yeah, but just in terms of the way they work, it's almost like the way I explain to you we work with our partners is incredibly respectful. If we're achieving our numbers, that they're respectful. I mean, like any private equity, if you're missing numbers, that you get more involved, but luckily we're not missing numbers.
Sure.
But also interesting in terms of the things that they focus on around, growth, innovation, and the way they're trying to bring value to us is around those things. And so it's sort of mirrored. So what I'd also say is not all private equity is the same, as you know. Some are much more hands-on, some are more draconian in how they work. So I think you have to select your partners carefully in that sense as well.
100%, 100%. Great stuff. Okay, perfect. I suppose something else that you mentioned about, you're not the sort of organization that are just going out there and paying silly multiples. That hit a note for me, because when I've covered the market from a holistic standpoint over TICtalk this year, I think that a lot of my network, when I'm having discussions with them, have said, again, from the outside looking in, it looks almost like a bit of a rat race, right? Where people are just out there trying to make as much acquisition or do as much acquisitions as possible. And I think I was speaking to quite a few people from corporate development a couple of months ago, and they were saying how the kind of EBITDA ranges in terms of where people look have actually gone down. It used to kind of be, let's say, between 6 to 8 million, and now it's probably looking a little bit less, between, let's say, 2 and 4. And that's probably because, as soon as something comes on the market, it just seems to be swallowed up. I mean, here we do kind of lots of different markets in terms of recruitment. I mean, I'm the TIC guy, right? But it's interesting looking at some of my colleagues that do completely different markets, because they've got like a lot of startups within their kind of, segments in terms of what they cover. I think for me, I really struggle to find, startup companies, because as soon as they start to show some real success, they do just seem to get bought and kind of, vacuumed off the market. But what you were saying about, we're not paying silly multiples. It really is about, finding people that, share the same values, want to work with us, that fit and align with what we want to do as well. That was really good to hear, because again, I think that might surprise a couple of people, to be honest, because again, people have kind of looked at it and been like, is this just kind of a strategy of buy as much as possible and then consolidate? Whereas actually it sounds like it's not that. It sounds like it's more kind of consistent, gradual, really thinking about the processes instead of just, let's just buy a load of stuff and then like consolidate afterwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Aidan, I think the challenge sometimes is what you compare against. If someone's doing like 5 acquisitions a year or 4, and suddenly you do 20, everyone's like, oh, they're doing a lot, yeah? And my argument would be, maybe we're not doing a lot, you're just not doing much. But also, to your point, it's like, we have been very consistent since day one, the segments we're in and the sub-segments within those segments, because as you can imagine, like infrastructure, built environment, they're quite broad. So we're very consistent what we've done. We're very consistent in terms of the metrics and the let's call it the characteristics we need in a deal. And we're very consistent on the multiples. We're very consistent in terms of the founders. So in our mind, first of all, we're clearly following a very strategic approach, and we're definitely not just buying anything, let's say. Yeah.
Sure.
When it comes to the founders and to your point about the multiples, I come back to what is it you're trying to achieve for yourself as a founder. So again, when someone comes to you and says, I'll pay you, doesn't matter, let's just say 7x multiple, and we come along and we say, we'll pay you 6x multiple. Our 6x is more than your 7x if you take a 5-year view and that you roll, let's say you roll 40%, you take a 5-year view, you benefit from all our synergies, you benefit from our infrastructure, you benefit from all the things you can do with us growing. When you take your 40% you've rolled over 5 years, you're going to add it together and you're going to make a lot more than the 1x more on 100% day one. Yeah. And so again, you've got to be careful when you're not even comparing apples to apples. You're comparing something. It's like, well, again, we're not doing 100% day one. So if that's your remit, if your thing is to maximize that, we're not even the person you should be talking to. But over 5 years with us, pretty much most of our deals, you'll earn far more because the way the deal's structured. And again, we don't play games with you. We don't load costs on there. You can earn a lot of money. And we advocate to every single one of our founders, you've got to make your own decision. But our advice to you is roll as much as you can because you're going to make a lot more. Yeah. And we want you to make a lot more. I think the other thing too, in terms of this sort of quantum, I look at it and go, again, when you look at, let's say, the benefits you can get, if you're just buying things, to your point. So again, if you're just buying things, anyone coming along when it comes to the next investor will look at that and go, they're pretty smart. Investors are pretty smart. They can see that and go, well, 1 + 1 = 2. You've added actually no value to your platform. If you look at Phenna, we're consistently high single-digit organic growth. We're consistently sort of mid-20s margin. We're consistently driving integration. We're consistently driving benefits. So no, so again, I look at that and go, to me, that doesn't stop because you do more acquisitions. I look at that and go, it gives you more opportunities. The more scale you have, the more opportunities you have. So I walk into Spain end of last year, my first business, my second business. How can I drive any synergies or integration benefits? I can't. I've got 2 businesses. I've all 4 now. I've got 6. In a few months, with the stuff we've got in pipeline and DD, I'm going to have 10 or 11. Now I'm driving 1 + 1 = 3 commercial synergies. Now I'm driving real back office integration benefits. Yeah. And so for me, the more you do, the more connected and the more integration and the more synergies you can drive. So honestly, Aidan, I just sit here and think you're looking at the wrong benchmark when you say 20 versus 4. It's like, well, 4 is your problem, not the 20.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It's interesting though, because like I said, I mean, people that I speak to in the network, I suppose, because they don't have the opportunity to speak to you guys directly, which is obviously why I wanted to do this. It's interesting that they kind of have these ideas or maybe kind of question marks, let's say, and thinking, oh, it's interesting, looking from the outside in, why are they doing this? But again, that insight makes perfect sense. At the end of the day, why slow down, especially if you're creating value, right, continuously. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, one thing as well that I was kind of just going to get into is when it comes to potential partners, we've obviously spoken about how, what do you want? What is it that we can offer you, and vice versa, about building trust, making sure that everything aligns on that side. When it comes to perhaps looking at companies from a technical capability standpoint, what would you say is happening there in terms of Phenna's I suppose position, at least for the past kind of 12 months? What do you guys really look at and want to see from a potential partner in that element?
Yeah, so I'd say most of, just trying to think a situation where it's not happened. So let's say most of all our acquisitions, Aidan, you've got a founder who's typically been a founder for, let's say, 10, 15, whatever year, yeah. And his business is in a, don't really like the word, but let's say niche part of the market. Yeah. So they may be a certain size, let's call it 1, 2, 3, 4 million of EBITDA, as you say. Yeah. And they're a niche player and they've got strong technical capabilities in what they do. Yeah. So whether it's, the equipment they do, the test type they do. We've just done an acquisition recently, for example, in Belgium, B2I. It's a good example. Yeah. very, very modern equipment, incredibly technical, let's call it employee base in terms of education, years in industry, the relationships they've got with customers who work in very much, advanced areas like, space work or defense, etc. Yeah. And so I'd say that sort of is a beautiful sweet spot for us if you combine it with, again, the metrics and a founder who connects with us and wants to drive his business for the next 5 years and wants to roll equity. Yeah, so it's only one part of it, but it's an important part. Yeah, so
Sure.
we typically take the other thing that we look for, again, this comes back to the number of acquisitions and the scale, is where can you fit versus something else. So for example, when we did the acquisition, it's in Belgium, and then the question is, we don't have anything else in Belgium. Yeah, true. But we do have things in Italy which actually have a similar customer base. And actually, the test that they do on the product machinery sort of certification side actually feeds into a little bit of what you're doing. So we actually think there's commercial synergies between the two businesses. Or, for example, we've got two businesses in Spain. One's in a region where they're trying to get into data centers, and another business is already in the data centers, and they have the customer relationship. So again, they can introduce them and bring them in and actually do a cross sell. So we're always trying with our businesses when we're doing acquisitions as to now, because we've got the scale, not only does it fit, to your point, the technical characteristics, the founder, the metrics, but where can they fit into our existing pieces, and where do we see synergies with our existing pieces? And it doesn't, it's typically within country, but this example with V2I, it's not in country. Yeah, it's across
Sure.
border.
Sure, 100%. That's a really interesting point as well, because when it comes to, I suppose, my job and from what I've seen working with clients, especially over the past 12 months, a lot of the roles and the positions that I've worked on are probably, I'd say senior director and above, but it's all to do with transformation, change management, even kind of chief growth officers, a few of which I've worked on when it comes to, again, realizing synergies or even kind of creating new synergies. Because like you say, it's not always down to one element. Let's say, for example, country. It could be down to, say market access or say customer base or whatever it is. But I think that's a really interesting point. And for me, it's kind of almost giving me a bit of reassurance and validation that what I'm seeing or what I'm kind of thinking from what I'm seeing is correct, in
Yeah,
terms of it seems to me.
yeah, I think you're right. And also, I think the key, let's call it, not say difficult, but let's say the golden difficult, whatever role, it's usually far easier to find cost synergies than commercial synergies. It just
Mm,
typically is. Yeah, you know where it is, you can touch it, and it's not saying it's easy, but it's easier. Yeah, commercial synergies, especially when you go cross business or even cross segment or cross country, is harder. It's just harder. It's harder to make work. It's just harder to do. Yeah. And obviously one thing about our industry, when you've got a customer relationship, they're quite entrenched, so it's difficult to sort of get dislodged. And if you don't have it, it's difficult to dislodge the one who's entrenched. Yeah. So it's harder. I think
yeah,
when you identify people who have that commercial mindset and can drive, let's call it the 1+1=3, the sort of commercial dynamics, that is a very valuable role. That is a
yeah.
very valuable person and people that you want in your organization, because that's not the simplest of skills, to be fair.
No, for sure, for sure. Would you say, by the way, that from Fenner's kind of point of view, let's say over the past 6 months, so for 2026, would you say that actually when it comes to talent, that's probably been the main focus, or would you say actually it's coming from lots of different areas?
No, I mean, I think it's all, I mean, because of the scale and we obviously growing quick. I'd say agency, whether it's, getting senior technical resources is not easy either. Yeah, certainly certain industries, there's not many of them, and obviously, again, once they're in a company, it's hard to dislodge them, and vice versa. Yeah, so I'd say no, it's across the whole spectrum. I just
Sure.
think, I just think, when I look at businesses, typically the businesses we have, like I said, they've already got a good technical skill set within their business. Okay, so it's not like it's not a need. We obviously have people leaving and people coming, but it's the bigger need for me is, as we keep scaling, we're looking at the sort of 1+1=3, is how do you commercially drive more from that? Yes, how do you generate more from the scale that you have? Because that to me is a harder thing. So the
For
technical is
sure.
important. That let's say the general support's important, the general management's important. I'd say the commercial thing is, let's call just say necessarily a bigger need. It's just a harder skill set to find.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, perfect. I mean, when it comes to, I suppose, scaling the business, I mean, what I really wanted to get into, and I suppose we can do for the next kind of 20 minutes or so, is, I suppose, really cover what we initially discussed, and why I wanted to have this call, which was, over the past few years, the support functions, systems, and processes that you guys have put in place. Because I think it's all well and good speaking about the acquisitive activity. People know you guys for that, but I think, to give them the insight in terms of what you've been doing, let's say behind the scenes, I think would be really, really good. So if you can give me some insight into those things and how you've done that over the past 2 years, that would be fantastic.
Perfect. So let's do it from two ways. Let's do it from, let's say, the top, and then, a better word, let's do it from the bottom. Yeah. So from the top, it's like, we're a global business. So we have four, say, keep it simple, four geographies: the Americas, UK and Ireland, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. And therefore we have four MDs and four FDs and four support functions. So we are geographically based. Yeah. So I don't think you can necessarily run the world from the UK. Yeah. It's 9 hour difference that way, sort of 6-7 hours that way. Customers and businesses in the US have very little in common, or at least connection, with those in Asia, and vice versa. Yeah. So when we talk about synergies and whatever, it's really within, I think, geographies. So first of all, we have a management team, a very senior management team, experienced management team, and we have a structure around those management teams. We have monthly calls with every business. So we run the company the way you'd expect a mature company to be run. Okay, so I'd say, so from a tops down, yeah, we have quarterly operating reviews, we have quarterly, monthly board calls with our investors. So we have the structure that you'd think, yeah. So when we talk about like all the acquisitions, they automatically drop into a structure. So for example, if I do an acquisition in, let's say, the Americas today, I've got an Americas MD and FD. They have a monthly call. We help them on stuff. They have regular calls in terms of how we can help them commercially. Can we help them on their website? So that structure exists from a top down. And so again, we can drop things into it. In the same way, M&A, we've got a global M&A team. We've got 9 people in the team, and it scales, and we've got a structure in place. Okay. From a sort of bottoms, like I said, there's think about it two ways. When someone comes into our system, we have a standard 90-day, 100-day plan. It was 90, I think it's now 100 because of some of the additional things we've loaded in there. So let's say we have a 100-day plan. Every business is on it, so it's not negotiable. Like I said, Aidan, we try to close in 5 days, 6 days. We close on a standard chart account in a global BI system. I can see all the metrics, every single business. I can see it in the system. Yeah, I can see all the P&L metrics, the balance sheet metrics, the working capital metrics, the cash metrics. I can see them. Okay, that is non-negotiable. If you don't have the finance capability to do it, we'll help you with the finance capability. We'll morph the finance capability. Same with cyber, same with health and safety. We've got a global health and safety system. You're on that health and safety system. You report in the same way so we can see the metrics. You're on our standard HR policy. So we'll call all that structural stuff within 100 days. You're on it. Okay. You're on our global insurance or global insurance policy, where we've got relevant scale. You're on our global procurement in terms of IT. So you're on that, and we get it on as quick as we can within 100 days. So it's all reported, it's consistent. I see it. Again, non-negotiable. Okay. Fully what I call integrated. And then the second piece I'd say is where we've got scale. So if you don't have scale, so I always smile, like the stuff that you integrate, like I just explained. But if you don't have scale, let's just say I enter Spain, and at the moment I've got 6 businesses in Spain. Very shortly will be hopefully 11, but I've got 6 businesses in Spain. So what I'm doing the things like I explained to you, introducing businesses. Can I help business A get access to this data center customers because business B does? I'm doing that. I'm doing business, and business B, can you cross-sell business C because you basically have similar customer base as you're selling sort of cyber assurance advisory, and you're selling, basically ISO. So can you actually sell it to? So we're doing that, okay? But we've only got 6 businesses, so there's only so much you can do. And beyond the absolute 100-day, we're going to integrate. Now, okay, roll it forward, and now we've got 20 businesses, and we've got, let's say, 6 or 7 businesses in the same segment doing similar things. Now we're going to do the next phase of integration, which we've done in the UK, or part of our UK business we're working through this year into next year, is can we put you on one ERP system? Can we put you on one shared service? Can we put you on one central commercial approach? Yeah, can we put you on our marketing network? So the things when we get scale, then we can do the next phase. So I tend to think about like everyone goes on the same integration journey the first 100 days. Everyone sort of gets introduced to their peers, and we try to do sort of 1+1=3 collaboration within the first, let's call it 100 days to the first 365 days. And then once you've got a certain scale, then we try to do the next level of integration, which is like stuff like ERP or, basically shared service. Okay. And we're always trying to, as best we can, obviously drive synergies and integration, but also trying to drive benefit for the founders, because typically what happens is either get a better service because they didn't really have much in the first place, or where they did, we try to do it in a way where, like, you're on our global insurance, you get better insurance coverage, but actually a lower rate. So again, you're benefiting from an EBITDA standpoint. So we do it in a way whereby, not in every case, you can't guarantee it in every case, Aidan, but in vast majority of cases, we give you more for at least the same or less. So from an EBITDA perspective, you're sitting there going, that's pretty good. I'm getting more, but I'm actually not losing on EBITDA. Therefore, my earnings. Great.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. No, that's really, really good insight, actually. I mean, I suppose when it comes to doing all of those things in the background, like building the systems and I suppose the support functions to allow those synergies to take place, to allow the integration to happen, I think it's probably, I mean, it sounds like it's been incredibly smooth sailing, right? And it's been really positive. A question that I did want to ask is in terms of implementing all of that, have you guys really kind of crossed some hurdles where you thought, maybe it's been unexpected or something that surprised you in terms of maybe a pain point or, any kind of, let's say, struggles that you've experienced where actually you've learned a lot from getting through those?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say first of all, as you know this, below the surface is like the classic analogy of a swan. Below the surface is not, there's a lot of stuff going on below the surface to make it look, let's say, elegant above the surface. So I'd say
For sure.
not easy. And then coming back to your point, links to your point, anything you do around systems is painful. My experience of systems is it's just painful. No matter what people tell you, people always tell you, we'll put this ERP in, or we'll do this, or we'll put this central CRM in, or put this global, health and safety platform in. Phil, it's a standard platform. We can do it in whatever X months. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've never really seen an IT project hit a timeline. And so when people tell me, I just sort of smile and go, okay, let's just put some buffer in there because it won't happen. And that's not being cynical. I've just been doing this too long. So I'd say IT generally, Aidan, is challenging. Yeah? I mean, it's challenging because also this is not, you're not going to, I mean, finance tends to impact the finance function of a business, and it maybe have some knock-on effect, but most people in the business don't actually notice the fact that finance reporting's got to change once they become part of Phenna, or in fact anyone. Yeah, finance typically changes. It doesn't spill over in the business. When you start doing IT things, it spills over in the business. It impacts the people who are maybe raising invoices. It impacts the people who are doing customer support. It impacts people who are doing pricing. It spills over into the business. So I'd say IT, there's some real lessons learned in terms of the biggest lesson for me, and it's sort of not a new lesson, but you keep learning the same lesson, which is you've got different founders who have got different levels of maturity in their business and different levels of, let's say, knowledge about IT and systems. And so you have to do it at a slightly different pace and maybe a little bit more hand holding. So Aidan, you might need a little less hand holding. I might need more hand holding. Yeah.
Sure.
Once it's gone live, I might need someone in your office for a week. I might need someone in my office for 2 months. Yeah. So I'd say just the IT deployment and the degree of hand holding, I think for us, the lesson learned is we're not all the same. So typically you come at this in Aidan, you go, you're going to get a week of support and I'm going to get a week support. Once we go live, I'm going to be there for a week and I'm going to be here for a week. No,
Sure.
you only need a week support because you're pretty mature and you're pretty smart. I'm not as mature and I'm not as smart, so I actually need 2 months. Yeah. And so you have to be a little bit more, how can I put it? The finance model is the finance model. Ultimately, the IT model might be the IT model, but in its execution, its deployment, it's ensuring it's actually being used and working. I'd say you have to be, to me, the biggest lesson in all these things is it's the most challenging. and you have to adjust based on the maturity of who you're working with.
100%. I mean, I suppose it sounds like as well, it's just a case of not standardizing everything. Like you say, people are different. Each situation is different. And I think, to be honest with you, I mean, working with a lot of companies in the market, I do see some cases, obviously without saying any names, but I do see some cases of actually people taking the other approach of standardizing a lot of things. And I don't think that is very beneficial, right? Because like you say, it's about speaking to different people, looking at different situations and saying, well, how do they differ? You know, they don't need the same support. And I think with a lot of the companies that perhaps, say, well, actually, we're just going to roll out the same thing the same way to everything and everyone. There's definitely some kind of, let's say, things that pop up that seem to be a bit of a pain point in the future after doing that. So it's a good approach.
But even if you are going to standardize things, again, certain like when we rolled out the ERP system for our infrastructure division, to your point, I can't standardize it in the sense that all my businesses aren't doing the same things. Yeah, so they have different requirements within the system, albeit I am rolling out a standardized, let's call it ERP. Yeah, but I think even within that, where you say, Aidan, you know what, we're going to get a standard framework and we want to limit the amount of, let's say, customization, because when you start going down that path, it just gets very ugly and it almost becomes possible in the long term to manage the system. So even if you drive in standardization, the way you deploy it, to your point, and the key lesson to us is like, I have to deploy it different to you than me, because you're more mature and knowledgeable than me. Yeah. And so you have to hold my hand a little bit different. Yeah. So even the way you deploy it to me, you have to be very careful. So even if you have a standardized, let's call it, approach,
Sure.
the highest level, you don't necessarily deploy it in a standardized way, because we're just
Yeah.
different. We're just different.
Yeah.
We're different people. We're different skill sets, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, rolling out standardization in an unstandardized way. I like it. For sure. Perfect. Well, I suppose just kind of like leading to the end of the kind of conversation, one thing I did want to ask is, you guys have obviously clearly defined, you mentioned at the start that you've got your 5 verticals, if you like. One thing that I suppose me as an individual and personally that I've thought is, would you guys ever consider, or has it even become a discussion of increasing the verticals, access to new potential markets, or are you guys pretty confident that actually, where you are at the moment is exactly what you guys want to do long term? You just basically want to build and continue the growth in terms of those 5 verticals.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't. I don't see it. I don't see any time in the near term that we change approach. No, we've got 5 verticals. We still feel there's abundance of opportunity within those 5 verticals. We think, as you know, TIC, even when you say again like built environment, the sub verticals within their sub segments, there's a multitude of sub segments. Yeah, air, water, fire, building controls, blah blah blah. Yeah, so I mean, I think no, because we just don't see the need, and I think it's also. I think for us as well as a team, we've got into the routine where people sort of know what we like and what we don't like, and again, what fits our criteria. So I just don't see I don't think it helps us if we come along and go, okay, now we're going to introduce this fixed one, or we're going to actually introduce, let's say, a little bit more flexibility in how we look at deals. No, and also, Aidan, when I look at the opportunity set in front of us. And again, this is why I smile too when someone says, "Oh, you've done 20 odd deals." I'm like, "Yeah, but we looked at hundreds, and also there's thousands out there." So I just don't see the need, and I just don't see that it would help us now.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Okay, perfect. And then I suppose over the next kind of 6 to 12 months, what would you say that we could probably expect to see in terms of the next phase of growth, if you like?
More of the same. I mean, what we tell our lenders and our investors is, again, we have a strategic approach. We have a playbook in terms of acquisitions. We have a playbook in terms of integration. We have a deployment cycle that says, again, look at our scale in the UK. The next so we'll complete the integration playbook in the UK, then we'll work it to Asia, where our next biggest is. Europe and Americas are built in. And then once they've got to a scale after Asia, we'll deploy it there. So I'd say more of the same. Honestly, like there's literally more of the same. We don't sit here, Aidan, and go, well, I need to do 30 acquisitions this year, because again, it's a number. Because if you do 30 acquisitions and they're all 100,000 in EBITDA, doesn't actually mean a lot. Yeah. And so I'd say we're not fixated. I mean, honestly, it will be what it will be. So I'd say more of the same. If you look at us though strategically, we've got this big base in the UK that's becoming less in terms of relative size because the others are growing much faster. But we've got this big base in the UK. We've got a good base in Asia. We're basically strategically building out our base in Europe and the Americas. So strategically, I'd say you're likely to see more acquisitions in Europe and Americas versus you in Asia, just a quantum of acquisitions, the amount of EBITDA that we're acquiring. But fundamentally, honestly, our approach since Paul started hasn't changed. I haven't changed it as a CEO, and I'm not planning to change it anytime soon. Honestly, it's just all the same.
Good to hear. I mean, to be honest with you, this time has been absolutely invaluable to me just because I think, and as well, a lot of the people that I speak to in my network will find this incredibly insightful because, like I said, I think a lot of people, they do make assumptions, right? I think looking from the outside in, it's one of those things where they sit themselves down and think, why are these companies doing what they're doing? What are the reasons behind the activity? And I think that this has just been amazing to hear, why you're doing what you're doing, the acquisitive activity, the story behind that. And I think, like you say, it's not a case of just looking at a number, and saying we need to do 30 acquisitions this year. It's about, being meticulous. It's about making the right decisions, finding the right partners. I think that for me was probably the most insightful, for the discussion is really just the trust that is so imperative to you guys and finding the right people to work with. And then obviously allowing that to kind of, I suppose, just affect those deeper elements within the business, like culture, which obviously will lead on to motivation, which will lead on to productivity, which again, it just kind of it oils the engine, right? And gets
Also,
the motor running.
Adrian, for me, is like early in my career, I spent 17 years at General Electric, the classic Jack Welch and the G days, yeah. And I learned there, people say, do you want volume or price? Do you want productivity or quality? And what I learned in G is, great management teams, you can actually have both. And so I sit here and go, when people say, you do a lot of acquisitions, you can actually do a lot of acquisitions and integrate them. You can actually do a lot of acquisitions and create value. So it's like this, you do a lot of acquisitions as if it's like, well, to me, the issue is not the number of acquisitions we're doing. I'd say the issue is someone doing 4 or 5 because you're missing out on
Yeah.
opportunity. And if you look at the management team we've got in Phenna, and we're not, I don't think we're unique. I don't necessarily, I'm not suggesting our management team is better than someone else's. But if I look at our management team, and you spoke about, you asked the question before, it's like, if I look at the Americas, the person who runs the Americas was our first acquisition, Anson. So Eric now has helped build the Americas and he runs the Americas. Brett, who runs Asia, he came with the first acquisition, helped us do the first acquisition. He's been with us for the journey and he's built Asia and he runs Asia. If I look at built environment in the UK, Brian came with an acquisition. He runs the whole division. If I look at certification, Mike came with an acquisition, APIT. He runs the whole division. Yeah. If I look at Europe, we've just brought a Tory in, 25 years from BB. He knows the market inside and out. Yeah. So we have people who know TIC. They either were a founder, so even more, you've got founders working for founders, okay? Or we've got people 20 plus years in the industry who understand and can work at our speed and understand that, it's not one versus the other. It's not, do you want volume or price? Do you want,
Sure.
I'd like both, please. And good management teams can actually get both. So again, I actually think that people are missing the trick by not doing more acquisitions because you're losing out on a huge amount of value creation.
100%, 100%. Yeah. Well, look, thank you again so much for your time. I honestly, I couldn't appreciate it more. I think that again, it's just been incredibly insightful. I mean, for me, most exciting prospect within the market. I cannot wait to see, what kind of comes within the next 6 to 12 months. Like you say, more of the same, but it's just always good to see, more news. And I suppose you guys are doing me wonders as well because I get to cover you every single week on my LinkedIn, which is helpful. But yeah, no, like I say, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that you kind of want to get across, or any other, I suppose, final words or a message that we perhaps haven't covered that you want to share?
No, you've covered a broad range. I mean, again, I just think, I think whatever, you obviously aid in from a recruitment standpoint, but whether it's someone looking for the next job or a founder looking to sell the business, I think the first question you've got to answer yourself is, what is it you're actually looking for? I mean, truly, there's lots of things we say, I want A, B, C, D, E, and F. You say, great, but what's A? What is and what's B? What are the priorities? What are you looking for? Because unless you answer that question, I'm not sure you can say whether Phenna or someone else is the best acquirer. Because again, if your absolute thing is, I want to maximize day one and I want to be out the business, well, then Fenna's not the best. And I'll look you in the eye and I'll say, Aidan, we're not the best. Why are you talking to me? But if you're saying something else, I want to roll 30, 40%, I want to stay 5 years, I want a partner who's going to respect me and actually work in a collegiate way, then we're probably the best partner you can find out there. Yeah. And it's the same with employees in terms of what, this from a recruitment, what is it you want? Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
for
you have
sure.
to answer that question first.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're absolutely spot on, because even in terms of, I suppose, doing my job, what we really drive is asking that question at the very start, because like you say, I suppose if there's an unknown there and you don't really know why someone is, for example, looking for new opportunities or looking to work in a particular vertical within the market, you will have problems arise later on down the line, right? I mean, we've got to manage processes. There's loads of different stages, right? From speaking to an individual, and then obviously getting them integrated into the new business. And I think that, like you say, if you don't really understand the true reason as to what someone's intentions are, you will have problems arise 100%. So I suppose just having that trust from the get, transparency, understanding someone's motives, the reason behind why they're doing what they're doing, just allows you to put yourself in a position where it's like either we're not right for you or we are. And a lot of the clients that we speak to, for example, when it comes to me, you know better than anyone. TIC is obviously very, very broad in the sense that there is lots of different pockets within lots of different sectors and verticals.
Yeah.
We kind of mentioned that earlier. When it comes to me speaking to clients, even having that discussion and saying probably not the best person to work with, because I've not done this specific vertical extensively enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just about it's kind of the same principle in that way of just transparency and trust.
Absolutely, 100%. That's exactly what it is.
100%. Well, look, as I say, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, it's been great to get to know you and obviously be introduced, because I appreciate before this we hadn't got a chance to speak. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if you need anything from me, you've got my email, so you can always just let me know.